Welcome to the Model Rail Replacement Podcast, helping you get to your onward journey. A friendly service that helps you get from A to B, or probably nowhere at all.
Hello and welcome to the Model Rail Replacement Podcast, Season 2, Episode 2, as we like to call it, MERP. I'm the host James, and with me is co-host and producer.
Sam. Hello, everybody.
Hello, Sam. How are you today?
Yeah, I'm all right. I've since we last spoke, I've had a little bit of a feng shui move around in the loft, and I've doubled my desk space. So now I've got my um work computer with my screens where I can airbrush at that particular desk, and then if you move along a little bit, I've got a cutting mat and paints and a soldering desk. So I've basically all the stuff that was squashed onto one desk, I've now moved over to another desk. So I've got double the space, I guess.
Very nice. Yeah, I think it's always good to have a nice big workspace as well, isn't it? I still got a little crammed, tiny little desk that I picked up from a charity shop years ago, which really isn't big enough for what I do because it's just covered in tools and bits and bobs. And it's very frustrating because I keep losing stuff on it and they're literally right in front of me, but it's just so messy. So I'm quite envious of that. But also, since we last spoke, I've realised that you're a year older as well, aren't you? So happy birthday.
Thank you very much. Tried to sneak that one past everyone, apparently.
Yes. Yeah, you claimed that you love to talk about your birthday and not a mention until you told me about your presents. So, but yeah, happy I'll get that right in a minute. Many happy returns. So yeah.
Thank you. That's very kind of you. So how
Oh,
are you?
I'm well. I'm very good. I'm working on another project at the moment because I always like to start another project. But I'm not going to say what it is because it's time sensitive. And I've got to get it done by the end of the month for it to be uh worth its while. If that doesn't happen, then the project never existed, sort of thing. So but yeah, it's coming along nicely. I think it will. I think I will get there, hopefully. But
Knowing what the project is myself, I'm very excited for it. And I do hope that you get it done because it is a really cool looking project.
yeah, I think so. I think it's a cool idea. It's one of the things I had the idea last year, and then me being me, I've left it to the very last minute to sort it out. But one of the reasons is the logo for it um, broke the other week due to a design flaw in the from the manufacturers. So it was a case of either sending it back, and it was still under warranty, but I couldn't find the receipt, so I'd have to pay for it to be fixed. But when I looked at it and I happened to find a magazine article showing what the motor should look like, I realized what the problem was and what parts had melted. So I completely basically rebuilt the frame that holds the motor in. But that'll be covered in the video when it comes out. So I'm sort of being a bit elusive to what I'm referring to at the moment, but all will become clear in time.
Nice. Well, I'm very excited to because I'm still only seeing like snippets of it, so I'm excited to see what you do with it when it comes out, knowing exactly what it is. So everyone else, look forward to it. That's an order.
Indeed, indeed. In fact, we may even have a podcast related to it. So let's have to wait and see, won't we? Cool. Right. Let's move on to news because there's a few things been announced over the last week. So where should we start?
Well, the first one that comes to mind for me, and this breaks the order of things that have been announced in, but I think it's because there's a potential that both of us would purchase this. And that is the London Transport Acura Scale exclusive pannier tank. And that looks gorgeous.
Does it just? Absolutely. I think it was the most, I want to say worst kept secret, but it wasn't really a secret. Sort of the best guess everyone was putting in to what the exclusive Akira Scale Panya tank was going to be because and obviously announced the models and there was no exclusive. And you were like, Akira Scale always do exclusives, they always do at least one. So I think everyone was going, it's got to be London Transport. But they upped it by announcing two. So you've got L91 and L94. And yeah, they do look absolutely gorgeous. And the London Transport Red on those panniers, I don't know, just suits it so well. Something about it. And yeah, I'm very tempted to get both because I've already got L92, which is the Batman model, and I could do a nice little scene of Neasden Shed, but I haven't done it yet.
So I've got one of the Akira Scale panniers on order, um, but that might tempt, and I've gone for the BR Black on it. However, I'm very tempted for going for the London Transport one instead. I don't think I need either of them, but both of them do look absolutely gorgeous.
They look absolutely beautiful stuff. So yeah, that's quite an exciting one. It'd be nice if they did some of the wagons that London Transport used to go with them, because that's, I think, one of the more frustrating things about it is, I think Batman have done a few XBR wagons that were purchased by London Transport over the years, like the old BR brake van and that. But they had like some special bogie wagons. I think the closest is the Oxford Rail Pilchard wagon, I think they're called. They kind of look similar, but they're not correct. So it would be nice to have some wagons to go with them as well. Time will tell on that one, I suppose.
Yeah, let's just hope our wallets all stay safe.
That's the other issue with Akira Scale. Keep announcing all these things. We had the 66s, the 60s, then we got the panniers. It's getting very expensive with them as usual, but that's, I suppose, that's what you get when it company that makes such lovely models. Uh, Talking of lovely models, have you seen Bachmann's latest announcement?
The T3.
Yes, so it's coming under their EFE brand. The T3 is one of the latest steam engines to be brought back to life by the preservation movement. It's on the Swanage Railway. It's an absolutely gorgeous looking locomotive. The Bachmann Collectors Club had their weekend over Swanage, and as part of it, that was their announcement. And this new model is to be produced based on the T3. I mean, it looks beautiful, and it's definitely something that if you like your era two sort of locos, this is going to be right up your street, I reckon.
Yeah, it's. I've only seen it in the engineering sample. I haven't actually seen it with the colors on it, but I can't wait to see if they match that green as well as it's been done in real life. So I look forward to that.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, that's a really nice colour at the moment, isn't it? It's the London South Western Railway sort of green. Um, so yeah, that was a nice little surprise as well. I think the fact that it's been brought back to Steam and then it's come that quickly around to a model form is quite impressive.
Yes,
Especially
yes,
as
it is.
especially as Batman like to keep these things close to their chest until they're sort of closer to being produced. So yeah, be nice to see that in the future. Hellion have also been announcing stuff this week, including a new run of their Class 37 with centre Headco boxes and the Class 31, both in O gauge. So that's very exciting for any modern image O gauge modelers. I really do like the look of the Hellion Class 31s, and I think they're just the right size for those that have a smallish sort of O gauge layout. You can get one on there. I think I saw one on what's the name of the layout that Neil from Little Layouts was building that you've been working on the rolling stock for?
So that's Patrick's Lane, which is the nuclear flask layout, the
So that's
military
what I
based
had.
one.
Yeah, I'm sure I saw 31 on that one, and it would look very nice. It just suited it just right. So yeah, there's more of them on the way from Hellions. That's a nice one for O gauge modelers out there, modern image modelers.
I think that's all of the new models that have been announced. I mean, I do tend to have that thing where it, I might block some stuff out of my memory just because if it's not what I'm after, I tend to sort of go a little bit blank. But there have been we're back into sale sort of area at the moment where it seems to be a mix up where you either have TMC or Rails constantly doing some sort of new sale. Sometimes it hits the stuff that you want, and then sometimes it doesn't. And I'm always grateful for my wallet when it hits the bit where it doesn't.
Yeah, so it's always better that way, isn't it? It's good. It's good. Well, it's not mine.
Yeah.
Well, we have got one more. We've got Daypol. They've got announcements in O gauge. They're doing their Sentinel again, which is the Y1 or Y3 in various LNER and BR liveries, and I think a few private owner liveries for anyone who likes industrial modelling, which it's a nice little bit today because that's what we will be talking about later. There's also the return of the Coalfish wagon, the merry-go-round wagon, and they're going to bring out some containers as well. So that's all in O gauge from Daypole.
It's one of those. I'm loving how much O gauge stuff's coming out at the moment, just because it just looks so fantastic. And Daypole and Hellion are knocking it out the park with it. They're really, really nice models. I don't know if I think we just missed the boat on it, but I know Gauge Masters 08s and 09s have just hit the stores as well, and they look fantastic. If there was a model that I was going to get to jump into O gauge, I think that would be the one, especially in BR Blue.
Yes, I did see them on the fence the other day. So they're getting really daring now. I think there's about 4 or 5 locos sat on that fence, which is very brave. Shall we go to our little chat of the day?
Yeah, so James, give us a little bit of a background on what we're going to be talking about today before we head to our break.
Well, I thought we could talk about something that is growing in interest and is certainly something that I think would help anyone who wants to start in the hobby that, realizes that trying to build a 4-track mainline may not be quite feasible. I thought we could talk about industrial modeling, the various types of industrial modeling, and how really it's a great way to get into the hobby. So let's take a break. Let's hear about someone who does a weathering service, and then we'll come back and talk about industrial modeling.
Look at that! You see that there? The super shiny diesel loco that's coming this way. Yeah, I see it. Isn't it beautiful? So fresh, so clean, like it's straight out of the box. I mean, yeah, it's nice, but I prefer it to have a used look to it. In an ideal world, that would be nice. But I'm sure the owner doesn't have the confidence, skill or time to undertake such a job. Then why don't they just send it to Emperor's Path? Emperor's Path? Yeah. SBJ has years of experience in model railways and wargaming, the ability to meet your weathering needs, and works with you during the whole process to ensure the project is how you want it, not like it's come through a factory. Come on, that must cost a fortune. Not really. He offers different levels of weathering at really affordable prices. I've got my whole fleet weathered by him. My loco's got the full treatment, whilst my rolling stock just a dusting with the airbrush, and it looks really authentic. I might just get a quote. How do I contact him? You get him on Instagram at Emperors_Path, by Facebook, Emperor's Path, or emperorspathcontact@gmail.com. Emperor's Path Weathering. If it's not filthy, let's change that.
Okay, so today we thought we'd talk about industrial railway modelling. It's a subject that has grown in popularity over years. It's more and more common to see at exhibitions, and I think it's a delightful subject that sometimes sort of gets missed in favour of the bigger engines, shall we say. So Sam, I thought we might start off by saying, if you were to do an industrial layout, what would you go for? Because there's so many different types out there. It's such a great variety in subject. Is there anything in particular that springs to mind that you think I wouldn't mind having a go at that?
I think yes, that there is something, and I apologize if this seems like it is quite a repetitive thing, but I think the idea of the layout fits anything. And I think it's a really good starting point as well for anyone getting into the hobby. It's certainly how I got back into the hobby. But I think if you're going to model industrial, a really good basis for it is the Inglenook shunting puzzle, because you can sort of build it around so many different things, but you can still keep it quite simple. And then as depending on what you're modeling, you can make your track plan really elaborate. So for those of you who don't know, the Inglenook shunting puzzle is effectively a spur of track leading up to 2 sets of points. So you effectively have 3 sidings. The 2 sidings have to be the length of 3 wagons, and then 1 siding has to be the length of 5 wagons. And the idea is that you're able to shunt a particular puzzle based on pictures, numbers, whatever way you want to do it. But every time I've seen it, it's been done in some sort of industrial format. And for me, one I'd love to do is like a dock industrial. That might not be the right kind of industrial, but I love the idea of the sort of the key sides. You've got the two levels, you've got a little bit of water feature, you've got the dock, and then the idea of having cranes, warehouses, and things like that in that industrial setting.
Yeah, no, that sounds great. No, I know that definitely fits into it because you've got the likes of Bristol Harbour, which was its own private railway, and does still exist to this day as a heritage line. If you're in the Bristol area and you want something to do, it's you'd have to look online to see when it is open. I don't think it's open every day, but they do run steam trains occasionally on there. So yeah, that would definitely suit the industrial image. And you know what? I hadn't even considered a dock. Hadn't even thought about it because again, immediately I'm just thinking of Southampton docks and the locos around there, Southern Region running it. But yeah, yeah, they've got the likes, as I say, of Bristol Harbour that had their own engines, and yeah, the Inglenook shunting puzzle is definitely a great starting point, and it's something that will keep your interest for a small layout. So essentially, as Sam says, you set your layout up with your sidings, your three wagons, another three wagons, and then five wagons can go in the bigger siding. And then the head shunt, that holds a maximum of three wagons as well, doesn't it? The loco and three wagons, if I'm correct in thinking.
Yes.
Yeah. And then the idea is that you label your wagons up. So how many do you have on there? You have, I think you have about, is it about 8 or 9 wagons in total on the sidings?
Trying to work it out in my head now. I'm pretty sure it's is it six wagons and the idea. Oh, I'm gonna have to look this up. Sorry,
I
I've
think
said it.
it's I think it's 8. I think you have three wagons that are not part of the makeup, and then the other five that are. And essentially, you'd label them up, and then you could draw them, make a randomizer or draw it from a hat. Some people just have put pictures on cards and they put them randomly in the order. So say you had uh, it might go a coal wagon, a van, a tanker, a flat truck, and then maybe a cattle wagon or something like that, and you have to put it in that order. And then the other three wagons sort of get in the way, and you have to shunt it around, and it's great fun for such a little layout. And there's other expansions on that idea. I think when you look at American railroad modeling, there's an industrial spot shunting, I think it's called something like that, and it's a, follows a similar practice in which it's a small layout which you can just about run round one or two wagons, and then they all have to be shunted to the various industries on the layout. So there's usually 4 or 5 different industries spurring off, and again, it's really tight. It's difficult to move everything around, and it's sort of hours of fun in a small space. So yeah, the Inglenook is definitely a great starting point for anyone that wants to get into the hobby and have something interesting to do. And it's not going to cost you too much. You could start with a very small shunter. It's only going to cost you, I mean, if you look at second hand, you might be able to get one that's cost you 30 to 40 pounds if you look around. Again, the wagons don't have to cost you too much. You can get them second hand. I mean, fiver is usually the price of a sort of standard wheelbase wagon second hand these days for some of the older models. So it's definitely a really good starting point. And I think you've hit the nail on the head immediately there for how I wanted to sort of suggest that industrial modeling is a great way to get into the hobby.
Oh, well, I'm glad. What about you? What would you go for?
I am quite fond of the National Coal Board based models that I
Mm,
see at exhibitions. I really do like the mix of locomotives they have on them. That are sort of some of them are their own industrial engines that the company have bought, and then some of them are XBR locos that have come along in later years. And usually they've got that nice NCB blue, but they've also wear other colours. But like the blue pannier tank, I think looks really nice.
mm.
It's definitely a very smart looking model. So yeah, I reckon something like that maybe, or maybe a brewery. Um, there's a really great layout that's been on the exhibition circuit for a couple of years, and it's a work in progress. So part of it's sort of done, and other bits are still coming along. It was featured in the April issue of Railway Modeler. It's called Copper, Wart and Co. Limited. It's a circular layout, and they really took use of the Hornby Peckett locomotive, and they're going to have like a fleet of them going round and I'm going to assume it's sort of based around is it Burton on Trent, where all the breweries are near Derby.
It sounds about
Um,
right.
that sort of area because they had. I mean, if you look into it, the breweries around there had their own massive, really complex railway systems that were all connected together. I mean, it was that vast and wide. It had its own signal box and signaling um, in it. So it's quite an impressive get up. And I think a brewery is also a really great sort of model to go for. And it's the likes of Metcalfe Kits for your background, because I think the brewery has been one of those sort of stable mates for many years of the range. You see a lot of people use it, and it's got that arch where it's like you've got one building, another building, and then a sort of bridge section going across that people tend to use as their scenic break to go into a fiddle yard. So
Yeah.
yeah, I think that would be my choice. Either one of sort of the NCB coal mines or yeah, a brewery. I think would be quite a good one.
Yeah, and like I said, I mean, that model railway guy, Joseph, I know his original layout that he did when he first started his channel. He had a sort of a shunting industrial layout that he had, and he had all the factories and stuff. But what was really nice about it was he had, because I'm pretty sure that was an Inglenook shunting puzzle, or at least something very similar, the three sidings on there. But he also had it where if you went back a little bit onto the head shunt, it then went into another point where you almost went down what you'd call an alleyway, where it was in between two factories, and it was like a hidden section, so you could go in there, and the hand of God could come in, remove some wagons, put some new ones on, and then the loco comes back out again. So the compactness of doing these industrial layouts is really good. You're almost fitting a complex sort of shunting puzzle if you want to, or a complex point system in a very small space. I mean, my Inglenook shunting puzzle, which is gone onto a different, it's gone onto a new owner now, but it was 4 foot by 1 foot, which is tiny, but it was able to go on the dining room table during lockdown to sort of have a play around with it. But I mean, if you expanded to a 2 foot deep board, you're able to increase the complexity of that particular layout, which I think is what's really good about the industrial layouts is you can have them long and have loads of things going on, but you can squeeze so much into such a small space with them.
Yes, definitely. And that's kind of sort of the nature of the beast, isn't it? Because they were squeezed into these sort of compact areas, sometimes really sort of tight, and wherever they could sort of fit them in. And that sort of real life examples that spring to mind is the biscuit factory in Reading, Huntler and Palmer, I think they were called. They have you'll know which one I mean because it's the really lovely blue Hornby Peckett that came as a set with three wagons
Hmm.
at one point. They that squeezed under the Great Western Main Line through a little bridge through there. The same with the China Clay Works down at Par, where you've got your Port of Par tank engines, which would probably most people would know them these days as Bill and Ben. Uh, but there was the Alfred and Judy locos, and they were so small with their squat cabs, and that's because again it had to squeeze underneath the main line to get round to the sidings. So yes, they don't have to be massive layouts. You can have nice small layouts, and I've seen examples in box files
Yep.
where someone's just had a few buildings and a couple of sidings, and they've done like a little industrial layout in there. So, and that's why I'm sort of trying to get to that point that, if you are looking to get in the hobby, you don't have to go out and buy a HST and try set up a nice big loop of track. You can just go out, get yourself a little shunter that you like the look of, and say a few wagons and do something small and interesting. And, you can always make it so that it can be expanded onto another layout in the future. It's, have your little industry, and then when space, time, and money allows, expand it so it does meet up with the main line, and you can have your mainline engines, and then you've got something to do because there's some great examples where the private exchange sidings are right next to the line, and that's when you get to see those industrial locos. One that sticks into my mind, those Hornby 040 little Sentinel shunters that they did.
Yeah.
Um, there was a couple of green ones, and they were based at a cement works out in East Anglia. And I always remember of seeing a photo in a very old, I think it was Motive Power Annual, and I was always fascinated by this photo because there was these two little shunters, and they were just pulling a rake of MGR hopper wagons into the siding. There's a couple of 20s waiting to pick them up, and I always thought that'd be such a great scene to model. Um, so yeah, you've always got that sort of privilege of it as well.
Yeah, and elaborating on that in the layout planning episode, we talked about if you're going to doing something with a small space, and towards the end of the episode, I said um, that what you could do is whatever you're doing, try and plan for two lines to go at the back. Try and make space for two lines just to sort of cross somewhere across the back of it, so that if you do decide to build something bigger, you've got two main lines, an up and a down, to have running in the background. And this is new to James as well, mainly because I've just thought of the idea now. But there's going to be sections on my layout where I'm going to have small spaces where I'm connecting the main layout up to the bridge board. But there's going to be sections where, because the track needs to meet up in a certain way, I'm going to have sort of 2, 3, 4 foot of track where it's off scenic. And actually, like talking about it now, it's made me go, well, what I can do is I can have those main lines going through, scenic them, but I could also have an industrial layout in the background, so that if you wanted to have the big long trains running past, you can still do that sort of shunting aspect of it too in the background.
Yeah, definitely. I'm trying to think. Did I suggest to you that you had a military exchange sidings? Because that's another one which people could model.
Yeah.
Is you've got your MOD trains, and there's some lovely wagons out there these days that allow you to model it, especially you were doing around the 1980s, 1990s.
Mm.
You've got the War Whale wagons that Curaçao now produce. Oxford Rail also produce their own version, but the Curaçao ones are the ex-Hands tooling. Cavalax have the flatbed versions, which the tanks are carried on. Although I think they're probably like hen's teeth these days. I don't think they've been around for some time.
Mm.
But if you can get them, they are very nice models as well. And then you've got the additions of your VEA vans, your VGA vans. Even today's modern MOD traffic will have a KFA container wagon probably attached to it as well. You've got the likes of that, and again, you just then can get yourself a little diesel shunter, one of Hornby's Sentinels, or Bachmann did even do a military-based train set at one point, which I think had an O3 shunter and a few wagons, and that was based on the military railway at Bicester. So if people aren't aware of that one, that's another great railway to look at. I think it's been slowly developed into housing, but when its existence is quite vast and wide. If you look on Google Earth, if it's still on there, how big that complex is, it's massive. So yeah, that's another one to consider. It's a military railway.
Yeah. The one, when you say military railway, the one that always springs to mind for me, no shock, is in the era that I model, Tidworth. The Tidworth layout is a fantastic layout that it's almost three layouts in one, because you've got the Tidworth military sidings at the back, which effectively operate almost on their own. You can have things coming off the main line in some of the sections, but it's such a small section where it's the military part of it where you have wagons come in, they'll do a little shunt, and then they'll go back out. You then have the passenger services coming in on one line. They tend to run the Class 117 and the Class 205 Thumper as their sort of stereotypical passenger trains that go through there. They're a decent enough size that they look nice and big, but they're not huge passenger services. And then almost down the other end of it, you've got I think it's Cement Works or something like that. I know Ropley and O-Gauge in Double O operates the layout quite frequently, so I might have to ask him what the actual crack of it is. But yeah, military is such a great idea as well. And like you say, there's the Patrick's Lane is a really, really good version of it. And I think the bit that keeps reoccurring in my mind over this is the fact that you have got really, really small layouts that can do it, but you can really expand on to make it even bigger.
Yeah, definitely. You can have the same if you want. It's a bigger industrial layout, because the other military line that comes to my mind is the Longmoor Military Railway,
Mm-hmm.
in which, if you want to splash out and get yourself a nice big locomotive, you've got those absolutely gorgeous austerity 280s, and I think the 210 is on the way from two manufacturers, I believe. So that's a possibility there. So you could have that with the likes of the 060 austerity saddle tanks and all that sort of setup. So yeah, it's another possibility in military modelling.
Hmm. It's, there's we've sort of opened this Pandora's box that we sort of did with layout planning and fiddle yards as well, where we start talking about it and we didn't think there was going to be much. Like, it was going to be sort of like a fun thing to talk about, but not loads. But I feel like we've opened this box now, and there's so many different things. And I mean, for me, if I was going to do one, the loco that screams to me straight away is a Class oh 08 or something very similar to it. But the idea of having one of those running around, I don't have one on my layout. Having a little small industrial layout and having one running around there would be perfect for me. In fact, when I made my Inglenook, that was what used to run round on it. But I think era-wise, I'd change it slightly now. But I think for me, if I was going to pick one, the Gronk is definitely up there for me. What would you, if you had to pick a loco for your industrial layout and it could only be one, what would you pick?
I think you're absolutely right with the choice of the O8 is a great choice. It's a recognizable loco, and it did be sold out of BR to other industries. You've got the added advantage that Bachmann have got their new one coming along, which has the automatic uncoupling. So if you really do feel like treating yourself, and I mean treating yourself because they're not cheap, but they got that wonderful automatic shunting mechanism on them that's going to make a little layout like that such a pleasure to run, I think. But then, we're very much focusing on OO gauge here. Let's not forget the Daypole also have the O gauge O8 shunter. And when you said about that, the one that sprung to my mind is the one that they had in a sale a while back, which is the Guinness branded O8 shunter.
Hmm.
Which you again, we're going back to a brewery, but you could model Park Royal in that sort of era if you're a diesel modeler. Um, Personally, I think I would probably go for the Hornby Peckett.
Hmm.
I just think it's such a delightful little looking loco. I do own one as well. I've been waiting a long time to get one, but bought one last year because I saw it at a good price, and I thought, yeah, I'm going to get one of them. I think that's beautiful, but I don't know. I've seen that Daypole Hawthorne Leslie that's been
Hmm.
released recently. That I think might be a contender. And then not to forget the Hatton stroke Acura scale, Andrew Barclay 040 as well.
Yeah.
But uh, probably the Peckett for me, maybe the Daypole, but I'll have to see. But there's just a few examples of industrial locos that you can get. And as I say, we seem to be very much focusing on our O gauge here, but industrial layouts are great for O gauge again because the space, if you're tight for space and small uh, arrangement of sidings and the small tank engine or shunter to go on it is going to make getting into O gauge a lot cheaper than trying to build a big main line, with a Class 50 and a rake of 7 to 8 Mark II coaches behind it.
Mm. I actually think one of my favourite, and I go back to the Inglenook because I think it is the best starting point for an industrial layout. One of my favourite versions of it was in O gauge, and I saw it at the Southampton show a couple of years ago, and it was effectively diesel shunter doing the Inglenook. But what the owner of it did to make it have a little bit more dimension to it was that you had the shunting puzzle and the industrial side of it on like ground level, and then there was a sort of there was like a wall, and at the top of that was a small branch line terminus where they had a class 121 that sort of came in on a shuttle system. So whilst they're operating on the lower part of it and they're doing the puzzle, you've got that constant moving in and out of the little 121 to sort of give it to break the scene up as well. And I think that's when if you can start adding in those small bits, because stereotypically you don't necessarily have massive passenger trains stopping at the docks or anything. Well, that's a lie. They do for some of the big trains, but let's talk. So Southampton's my local one. You've got the Southampton docks with all the Freightliner stuff there, and there is a station that's at where the Freightliner depot almost is, sort of one of the big stabling yards. I don't think I've ever seen anyone get on or off at that station, but it is a station that's on there, and you can have it where you have this almost dead platform where no one gets on or off, but you can have things passing through or stop and then go the other way and things like that. So you can add these small little bits in to make it so it's not just industrial, but you can have just an industrial side of it as well.
Yeah, yeah, I think so. Yeah, there's I think there's the likes of Severn Beach, around near Bristol, which with a name like that, you think it sounds glorious and all the tourist traffic would go there, but it's again a really tiny little sort of rundown station that's just there for the connection of industrial units and staff and that. So yeah, you're right. You can have these little stations with very few passengers on and a train just trundling in and out now and again, just sort of serving that industry.
Mm.
But I mean, the other thing not to forget is that industrial railways come in all shapes and sizes. And obviously you've got your standard gauge, and we've touched on just a few of the things that you can model. I mean, you've got, as we say, coal mines, there's quarries, breweries. I think we've mentioned China Clay Works, a biscuit factory. You've got other things like ironstone works, and then obviously slate workings, and that's traditionally worked by narrow gauge engines. And you can, if you want to model a vast sort of scenic area or something like that, or even a small, because it fits in there. I've seen a small narrow gauge slate quarry layout on the exhibition circuit. It wasn't massive, but really beautifully modeled and detailed. Yeah, you've got the likes of that, and with Bachmann and producing and Helion to an extent of ready to run narrow gauge locomotives. Again, that's another easy way to get in on a space saving layout that can get you into the hobby.
Yeah. I mean, you can also go the other side of it. I mean, I don't know what the shunting capability of N-Gage is like. You're the person to ask about that. But you can go the other side of it where in modern day, industrial doesn't necessarily mean small shunting areas. Industrial means 15, 20 aggregate hoppers, or the stone train that goes out of near Botley, near me. Basically, every Monday you always see the stone train going past, and it's a very, very long train, and I guess difficult to do in O gauge, doable in double O, but we're leaving N gauge out a little bit, and you know what? They can do much better, and there's a reason you see all these on the exhibition circuit. They can do the big long trains that are going from A to B, and you're sort of seeing them mid journey. You can do that sort of industrial side of it as well.
Yeah, definitely. It's you've got the likes of Peak Forest, which people have modelled and engaged. It's been featured in various railway modeler publications, and yeah, as I say, I've seen it on the exhibition circuit. You've got the likes of Merehead and Quarry that again, I think that's a fascinating subject, because that is, I'm hoping I got the right quarry, because there's two round that way, around the Somerset Way, Merehead and Whatley. I'm trying to think which one it is. One of them, however, you've got the lovely single line that comes off the line to Castle Cary from Westbury, and it trundles through a tunnel, and then you come into the quarry area. And again, like you say, if you model out an N gauge, that'd be great, because you can model those big jumbo trains that they set up, and it wouldn't take too much space. But you also got that added sort of interest that I'm sure someone would correct me in which quarry it is. I think it's Merehead, but it probably turned out to be Whatley. But Yeoman, many years ago, they bought a American switcher for shunting in their quarry, which is what led to the Class 59s, because they were so impressive. It was, I think it was an Alco 1 off the top of my head, possibly something like that. But they were so impressed with it, that's why they turned to General Motors and said, look, can you build us some locos? Because they weren't happy with BR's performance with their Class 56s, etc. And so, yeah, that's another thing is, if you wanted to model Britain, you don't necessarily have to have British prototype engines. You can, always using Rule 1, you can bring in an American switcher loco if you wanted, or a European model of some description, because it's the same. We sell our locos to Europe, and those end up in European industrial sort of lines sometimes. The Class 58s were sold to Spain and France, and were used on the infrastructure trains for building brand new railways. which I think again is another interesting sort of concept that you could model a high-speed line being built. You don't necessarily have to have that high-speed line finished because you could just have all the trains shunting wagons in and out. If you wanted that as an interesting subject.
There's so many options for it that we open this can of worms, and I don't know if we'll ever stop. If you were going to pick, obviously I've cornered you with what loco you'd pick. I mean, give me a size and a gauge. What are you working with? If you were going to go right, I'm walking away from this call and I'm going to build an industrial layout. I'm not going to say money's not an object because that's a farce. But if I was to say to you had to pick a gauge and what size it would be, what would you go for?
That is a tricky one because you're right. We have opened a can of worms here, but that was kind of what I wanted to suggest with this. Again, get back to that point that encouraging people to come into the hobby is, just have a look at industrial modeling. I think I would maybe. I'm tempted to say O gauge just because it would be a great way to get into O gauge and do something based like that. Maybe I don't know what's popped into my mind. I think it was around Great Yarmouth. I'm not quite sure, but there was some sidings. It was definitely East Anglia. It was a sleeper works, so it's where the LNER built. So we cut all their sleepers, loaded them up on trains, and I'm sure they had one of those Y1 or Y3 Sentinel shunters that used to work around there. And so I think that would be quite an interesting subject. That's the one that sprung to mind. If I went away, I think I'd maybe have a go at that one.
Nice.
What,
Okay.
What about you?
I'm sticking with you in the O gauge front. I think building a small industrial layout would be really, really fun to do in O gauge as sort of like if you wanted to do O gauge, but you knew you didn't have the space to go into the big layout or you weren't going to build an exhibition layout. I think building a small, I'm trying to work out how much space you'd need. I'm looking behind my desk now. You could probably get away with 6 foot, but let's say an 8 by 2 foot layout, you could do a decent shunting, some sort of shunting thing on there. And I think O gauge would really benefit from that. And you can theme it, or you can do sort of like a freestyle on it where you pick your favorite loco and you've just got a yard that has loads of industrial wagons, almost in sort of like I think Speedlink services are a really good way to sort of word it, where you have so many different types of freight that come into one area that are going off to separate bits and bobs, whether that's tankers, fertilizer, Speedlink wagons, all of these various different things. I think that's definitely a yard you could do, and then you have a little bit more freedom with what sort of wagons you can do.
I think that's a good shout, and that as you described that what sprung to mind to me was Morris Cowley in Oxford, which nowadays it's just the mini plant of the sort of car trains that would get loaded. But I think once upon a time they did have the Speedlink trains go down there, and there was a few other various industries where there was an O8 station down there to shunt the wagons. So yeah, I like that idea. I think another one possibly would be looking at Bachmann's new NG7 range. Something there would probably be quite good to work with as well. But I think we've got the juices flowing on the idea, and like you say, we could be here all day. But I think we've touched on the subject long enough that anyone listening, if you're stuck for ideas, I think we've just given you plenty to choose from. So I think we should take a break and then come back and do our social media shout outs.
This world we live in is a wondrous and fascinating place. We stand on the brink of greatness and a chance to make a real difference in this world. Two people who are not making a difference in the world are James and Sam. So great are their egos that you can now support them on Patreon from $5 per month to just show your support. You too can watch the model railway world burn under their narcissistic natures. Head on over patreon.com/. Model Rail Replacement Podcast.
So that was our chat about industrial railway modelling, and I really do hope that people out there that are listening that haven't started a layout and have been stuck for ideas, that this might help you get into the hobby. As I know there are people out there that do listen and don't model rail but want to, and they've sort of been enjoying the podcast. So hopefully we've done a bit of good there.
I think we have. I think walking away from it, like we took a short break, and I'm already sat looking at the layout going, how can I squeeze a small industrial bit on here? And yeah, I mean, it is. I love the idea of having it separate from your layout, but you have the ability to still have the layout. Like I like the idea of having my 2-track main line running past a small industrial section where you can have that O8 shunter just sort of working away, and you can have your trains running around, and you can operate that one separately and still have a little bit of fun with it. So yeah, the ideas are there.
Indeed. I mean, even now, there's still industries that I'm thinking we didn't even mention, like steelworks. And it's comes to mind, and they have some really interesting locos and wagons and stuff. So, but yeah, if we go back, we'll start talking about this all again. So let's move on, and we'll do our usual. Do you want to do a social media shout out?
Yes. So mine this week is going to be Max Tracks. That's MAC apostrophe S Tracks. Max Tracks. Now, I've only watched a couple of videos of this, but I watched one of them a while back, and it suddenly popped up with more of them recommended on my YouTube. Now, the reason I like this is because Max Tracks does a lot of cab ride videos from the very early 80s to sort of, I think, around basically the 80s. And there's a particular one where they sit in the cab of a Class 205, and it goes from Portsmouth Harbour train station all the way up to Eastleigh. And not only is seeing it interesting, because the driver at one point points out, he goes, "Oh, you can see where they're putting the pots in for the third rail, blah, blah, blah." Because those of you who don't know, once you came off Portsmouth, if you went right towards Brighton and Havant, which led you up to Waterloo, that part was electrified. But the electrification between Portsmouth and Southampton didn't happen until much later in the 80s. So if you went left off the island, you went on a diesel unit, or you were hauled by a diesel. And it's just a really interesting video for me, being from Portsmouth, seeing a cab view of where the trains go on and off the island is great. And then even knowing the areas around Southampton, but listening to it with the sound on, the conversation between, I'm going to assume, Mac and the driver at the time is really, really interesting. So it's one of those ones, usually I'd be like, yeah, have one of these cab ride videos on in the background. You don't have to have it loud. This one's a really interesting one because of the chat that the driver and Mac have. So definitely worth a watch. There's loads of other ones, and I'm going to go and watch some of them a little bit later. But yeah, the Thumper journey from Portsmouth to Eastleigh is a really, really good one to watch.
Sounds very cool. Yeah, I do like cab ride videos. They're always very interesting, and just get that view of the world from the driver's eye. And sometimes it gives you that idea of detail that you may have missed on your layout, and you go, oh, I need to model that. I need to put that in there. So that sounds very cool.
Yeah. So what about you? Who are you shouting out this week?
I am shouting out Bucks Hill Model Railway in 7mm, which I discovered the other day. And it's a very, very small channel with only 306 subscribers. That's because it's only got one video. But this layout is absolutely fantastic. As I say, it's an O gauge layout. I found it really enjoyable to watch. He's described how he's built it and all the various locos and that. So yeah, probably one of the smallest channels I think I've ever shouted out with just one video. But it's a great watch, and I would recommend having a look at Bucks Hill Model Railway in 7mm. So yeah, that's our social media shout outs for this week. We've talked about industrial modelling. We've announced the news. I think we've covered everything we usually do in our podcast. So there's only one more thing to do. Sam, if people want to find you on your social media, how do they find you?
So the easiest way to find me is you can get hold of me on Instagram at emperors_path. Alternatively, you can find me on YouTube at Emperor's Path. James, if people want to find you, how can they do so?
Well, it's the usual on YouTube. It's Western Signalman. Instagram is Western Signalman. There's even an email with westernsignalman@outlook.com. But don't forget that the Model Rail Replacement podcast is also on that social media wavelength, and we have our own Instagram account, so come find us on there. We're slowly creeping up towards 1,000. I say slowly, but I think we're at 500 at the moment. So there's plenty of room for people to come and join in on that account. And if you do want to email us about something, it's Model Rail RP, that's Romeo Papa, at outlook.com. That's us done for the day. So I'll just say the usual, that hopefully we've been entertaining, informative, and have replaced your model railway, if only just for a little bit. I've been James, and with me has been Sam. Thanks for listening.
This service terminates here. Please ensure you take all of your personal belongings with you.